Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror thriller film, Homunculus. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In the middle of the city, a homeless man who suffers from amnesia, called Mr. Blank, tries his best to survive his daily life. The only thing he has is a car, and a card which contains the money left from his former job at a financial institution. So he can still afford to eat in a fancy restaurant despite being homeless. At night, a young intern doctor, nicknamed Doctor, approaches him in his car. Doctor offers Mr. Blank tons of money, in exchange for his participation in an experiment. Doctor explains that the human brain only uses 10% of its capacity, and he speculates that using its full capacity could lead to a lot of possibilities. So he plans to unleash the full capacity of the human brain by drilling a small hole in the skull. Mr. Blank just coldly tells Doctor to leave, since he already has enough money to survive daily life. It seems like Doctor personally knows Mr. Blank, as he calls Mr. Blank in his real name. Doctor knows that Mr. Blank is an emotionless person who desperately tries to feel alive. The following day, Mr. Blank suddenly gets towed away. He is completely annoyed upon knowing the fact that Doctor is responsible for it. Doctor says that he can give Mr. Blank reason to be alive in just 7 days. Mr. Blank then finally agrees to participate in the experiment because he has nothing to lose anyway. After that, they arrive at Doctor's creepy apartment where Doctor will conduct the experiment. Before the experiment, Doctor explains to Mr. Blank that the procedure will reactivate Mr. Blank's brain. As Mr. Blank finally understands the procedure, Doctor removes a portion of his forehead skin. Shortly after, Doctor starts slowly drilling a hole in his skull. The following day, Mr. Blank wakes up in his car, where he appears to suffer in pain from the procedure. He then finds money slipped in his car, with a note from Doctor requesting a dinner meeting. So later at night, he comes to meet Doctor in a restaurant. He returns the money to Doctor, saying he does not need it, since he already has his own money. Doctor then proceeds to observe him by letting him play a card game. Before parting ways, Doctor gives him a phone where Mr. Blank can contact him. Doctor also gives him a hat to hide his wound from the experiment. Shortly after, as Mr. Blank walks alone in the street, he discovers that he can see people differently when he only uses his left eye. The people in the street suddenly shift to weird forms and shapes as he looks at them using his left eye. He then accidentally bumps into a robot man, who turns out to be the boss of the Yakuza gang. In anger, the Yakuza boss attempts to cut his pinky finger. But it appears to Mr. Blank that the Yakuza boss is cutting his own finger, so Mr. Blank informs him about it. The Yakuza boss then starts shaking. In a few moments, the Yakuza boss bursts into tears, making him leave the scene. After that, Mr. Blank immediately informs Doctor about his strange experience. Doctor then speculates that the experiment activates Mr. Blank's sixth sense. So he instructs Mr. Blank to use it for him. But when Mr. Blank takes a look at Doctor using his left eye, Doctor appears to be invisible. He then tells Doctor that he doesn't see anything. The next day, Mr. Blank finally gets his car back. As he is staying inside his car, Doctor suddenly calls him. As they meet, Doctor explains Mr. Blank's strange experience. Doctor speculates that these monsters are called homunculus, which he thinks is the manifestation of the people's innermost traumas. This means that the experiment activates Mr. Blank's capacity to visualize the people's hidden traumas by seeing their homunculus. To test Mr. Blank's ability, Doctor brings him towards a brothel, where there are a lot of traumatized people. Among the women, Mr. Blank finds a sand monster hidden within a pretty woman, nicknamed Beauty, who wears a tag with the number 1775. They then follow her to a cafe, to further gain information about her. Shortly after, Doctor comes to approach Beauty at her table. As Mr. Blank takes a look at them, he notices that Doctor, who appears invisible, slowly absorbs the sand from Beauty. At the same time, Mr. Blank's left eye reveals that Doctor's homunculus takes the form of water, as bubbles start appearing in Doctor's invisible body. In a few moments, Beauty leaves her table. On the other side, Doctor is left in a state of nervousness, while red lumps mysteriously appear on his face. Doctor then abruptly leaves, after he hands over Beauty's phone to Mr. Blank, which he stole from her. It seems like Doctor is allergic to women, and Beauty, who calls him a virgin, is able to sense it. Later at night, Mr. Blank snoops on Beauty's phone. He discovers that she lives with a very strict parent. At the same time, she has an alternate social media account that she uses for erotic and artistic expression. Suddenly, the Yakuza comes to kidnap Mr. Blank and brings him to the Yakuza boss. It appears that the Yakuza boss wonders about why he gets emotional in their encounter. Mr. Blank then explains his vision to the Yakuza boss. When Mr. Blank takes a look at the Yakuza boss, his left eye reveals that there is an innocent child hidden behind the robot homunculus of the Yakuza boss. It turns out that the Yakuza boss accidentally cut his best friend's pinky finger during their childhood. The Yakuza boss fails to apologize to his best friend, so he carries the hidden guilt until now. The Yakuza boss then deliberately hurts other people to hide the guilt. As the hidden guilt gets uncovered, the robot suddenly breaks, which reveals the crying child. In tears, the Yakuza boss finally confronts his guilt and apologizes for his mistakes. In the end, he finally decides to change his life. He quits the Yakuza gang and cuts his own pinky finger. After that, Mr. Blank comes to have dinner with the homeless people in the park. There he tries to explain his former job, which is to calculate the monetary value of a person. The dinner then turns into a scuffle, as the homeless grandpa believes that the worth of a human person cannot be calculated. Suddenly, he receives a call from Beauty, asking for her phone. He then comes to meet Beauty to return the phone. When they meet, he uses his ability to see Beauty's sand monster, but it turns out that the sand grains are actually symbols. As he sees the symbols, he discovers that Beauty is highly traumatized by her strict parents. Apparently, Beauty taunts people into having a hormone game with her to rebel against her strict parents. As the sand monster keeps taunting him, he forcibly penetrates the sand monster while also penetrating Beauty in the real world. He then notices a drop of blood from the sand monster, which signifies Beauty's scar. After that, he sucks the blood out of Beauty's smelly legs. In response, Beauty stops him, and she sucks the blood out of his smelly mouth. As a result, the sand monster disappears and Beauty finally returns to her normal state. It seems that Beauty's hidden trauma is healed. The following day, Mr. Blank wakes up in shock upon realizing that he absorbed other people's traumas. He then rushes to the hospital to find Doctor, but the hospital staff tells him to wait. In the waiting line, he encounters a faceless woman, which scares the shit out of him. He feels like he has already met the woman before. Soon after, Doctor finally arrives to pick him up. Doctor explains to him that he has the ability to heal people's trauma by absorbing them. Doctor then tells him about a woman who also absorbed other people's trauma. The woman, however, ends up committing suicide. Upon knowing this, Mr. Blank angrily tells Doctor to remove the ability. Doctor agrees, but with the condition that Mr. Blank would reveal Doctor's homunculus. But Mr. Blank refuses to reveal it. Later at night, Mr. Blank still thinks about the woman he sees from the hospital. He then rummages through his car to find something that would remind him of her. As he sees a card with the name of Nanako, his memory of her comes back to him. In his memory, it turns out that he had already met Nanako in a bar. After they met, they eventually lived together while loving each other. So the following day, he comes to trace Nanako in the hospital, but it turns out that Nanako also suffers from amnesia. He then brings her to their old apartment to make her remember everything. As it seems that she finally regains her memory, they spend their first, fantastic, but fast hormone night in the apartment. The next day, Mr. Blank realizes that he is coming back to normal, as he loses his ability to see the homunculus. He then takes a look at Nanako's face. To his surprise, there is an operation wound in her forehead that reveals she is also subject to the same experiment. Mr. Blank quickly drives towards Doctor's apartment to confront him, but upon his arrival, Doctor is not there. As he takes a look at Doctor's family picture, he receives a call from Doctor. In the call, Doctor vaguely tells him that the world he sees through his so-called sixth sense is just a convenient illusion he created, including his memory of Nanako. Doctor then says that the real Nanako would eventually remember the real world, and at that moment, Mr. Blank would learn that some memories are better left unremembered. Meanwhile, Doctor arrives in their old apartment and confronts the woman, who turns out to be a fake Nanako. He then calls her using her real name. On the other hand, Mr. Blank desperately finds a way to know the truth. He then gets the drill to open up his sixth sense again. In a few moments, he courageously proceeds to drill his own skull. After that, he finally regains his ability to see the homunculus. He then returns to their apartment to confront the fake Nanako. As he takes a look at the fake Nanako, her face slowly shifts to the real Nanako's face. He then begs the fake Nanako to reveal her true identity. At this moment, the fake Nanako admits that she is responsible for the real Nanako's death. He then gains a vision of the fake Nanako driving with her boyfriend. It turns out that the fake Nanako jumped out of their car in the midst of an argument. As her boyfriend came to grab her, their car accidentally hit the real Nanako. Her face then showed horror as she witnessed her boyfriend and Nanako's death caused by accident. At the same time, Mr. Blank regains his memory, which reveals a bitter truth. It turns out that before the real Nanako's death, the real Nanako break up with him. Apparently, the real Nanako has a miscarriage, and Mr. Blank never knows it since he seems uncaring towards her. The real Nanako then ran outside in the midst of their argument. He tried to chase the real Nanako, but she still got accidentally hit by the car. It seems like the fake Nanako's hidden trauma about the accident creates a homunculus that makes her appear to Mr. Blank as the real Nanako. In the end, the fake Nanako tearfully apologizes and reveals her name to Mr. Blank. After that, she collapses, and Mr. Blank brings her to bed. As he comes out of the room, he encounters Doctor sitting in the chair. Doctor mocks him because the love of his life is already dead. In return, he reveals the bitter trauma hidden behind Doctor, which is water. This is why Doctor appears to be invisible at first glance, but when Doctor gets nervous, bubbles come out, which reveals the homunculus in the form of water. Mr. Blank then intently observes Doctor using his ability. At this point, he discovers that Doctor never gets his father's attention. Apparently, his father always has his attention on his beloved fish. He thinks his father loves his fish more than him. He even drew fish scales to his skin so he could resemble his father's fish. In the end, he finally decided to break the fishbowl, which led to the fish's death. He desperately tries to get his father's attention, which explains why he is so obsessed with his experiment. At that moment, he starts to weep like a baby and begs Mr. Blank to help him. Meanwhile, Mr. Blank realizes that he and Doctor are similar. They both wanted to be seen, but they never attempted to take a look at the other people. The movie ends where Doctor drills a hole in his own skull. He laughs in madness as he gains the ability to see the homunculus. On the other hand, Mr. Blank finally has a reason to live, as he decides to happily live with the fake Nanako instead. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.